In the heart of the world's largest hot desert, deep within the Algerian Sahara. For centuries, this vastness seemed like an insurmountable obstacle. Thousands of kilometers of sand, temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius, and regions almost completely isolated from the north of the country. Yet today, Algeria is building a project that could transform the entire geography of North Africa. A giant trans-Saharan railway over 2,400 kilometers long. A strategic corridor intended to connect the Mediterranean to the heart of Africa. This project will not just be used to transport passengers. It could become one of the continent's major trade routes, accelerating the transport of minerals, oil and gas, and opening a new economic gateway between Europe and Africa. But building an ultra-modern railway line in the middle of the Sahara is likely one of the most complex engineering challenges of the 21st century. How does Algeria plan to meet this challenge? Why is this project considered one of the most ambitious in all of Africa? And above all, can it really change Algeria's economic future? That is what we are going to discover.
Why has this project become essential for Algeria? After crossing the vastness of the Sahara, one question arises. Why is Algeria investing billions in a single railway line? To understand, we must first look at the map. Algeria is not only the largest country in Africa. With nearly 2.4 million square kilometers, it is a gigantic territory. From the Mediterranean coast to the borders of Niger and Mali, over 2,300 kilometers separate the north from the south. For comparison, if you placed Algeria on a map of Europe, it would stretch from Madrid to Warsaw. And if compared to the United States, it would cover several states in one stretch. In other words, moving people or goods across such a vast territory is a constant challenge. For a long time, economic development was mainly concentrated on the northern coast. Major ports, industrial zones, universities, and modern infrastructure were found almost exclusively near the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, the Algerian Sahara remained immense, rich, but difficult to access. Yet it is precisely in this desert that some of the country's greatest riches are found. Immense oil deposits, natural gas fields, iron, Garrett Jebelet reserves, phosphate mines, and future green hydrogen projects. Resources capable of fueling the economy for decades to come. But a major problem persisted. Extracting these riches was one thing, transporting them to the port was another. Thousands of trucks traveled hundreds of kilometers every year, leading to very high logistics costs, significant delays, and an almost total dependence on road transport. In some regions, a simple trip could take more than 30 hours. For a country with ambitions of becoming an economic hub connecting Europe to Africa, this situation was no longer acceptable. That was when a gigantic idea emerged to create a true railway corridor capable of crossing the entire Sahara. A route that would not just link north to south, but could eventually connect Algeria to Niger, Mali, and more broadly, to the rest of Africa. A project capable of transforming an immense geographical barrier into a true economic highway. But imagining such a project is one thing. Building it in the middle of the planet's largest hot desert is quite another. Because even before laying the first rail, engineers had to face an invisible enemy, the Sahara itself. Chapter 2. The project that will cross the Sahara. Today, this project has a name, the Trans-Saharan Railway Line, a titanic undertaking that ranks among the greatest infrastructure projects ever launched on the African continent. Its goal is clear, to link Algiers to the Deep South, then open a new commercial gateway to sub-Saharan Africa. Eventually, this line is expected to span nearly 2,400 kilometers across Algerian territory. Certain sections will be designed to accommodate trains traveling at up to 220 kilometers per hour, considerably reducing transport times. But this line will not only transport passengers. Its main mission will be to speed up the transport of goods, strategic minerals, industrial products, energy equipment, and natural resources to Mediterranean ports. In just a few hours, cargo that previously required several days of road transport will be able to reach the country's major economic centers in the north. For Algeria, this railway represents much more than just a piece of transport infrastructure. It constitutes an economic backbone capable of bringing together two long-separated Algerias. The coastal one, dynamic and industrialized, and the one in the Sahara, Nahar, an immense reservoir of wealth that is still largely underexploited. Chapter 3. Building a train in the world's largest desert. On a map, Drawing a straight line across the Sahara seems easy. In reality, it is probably one of the most complex engineering challenges of the 21st century. The desert is not a vast, perfectly stable plain. Dunes shift under the effect of the wind. Temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Thermal fluctuations between day and night put materials to the test. Some areas consist of extremely hard rock, while others rest on unstable sandy soil. Before even laying a single rail, the engineers had to prepare the terrain. More than 11 million cubic meters of sand were moved. That is a gigantic volume, comparable to several thousand Olympic swimming pools. Along the route, 86 bridges were also built to cross wadis, roads, and natural elevation changes. Dozens of hydraulic structures complete the project to protect the railway against flash floods, a phenomenon surprisingly frequent in certain desert regions. Each kilometer built represents thousands of hours of work, hundreds of workers mobilized, and impressive logistics. Here, nothing is simple. Everything must be transported across hundreds of kilometers of desert before work even begins. Yet, despite these exceptional difficulties, the project continues to move forward, and the numbers already give an idea of its scale because behind this project lies a colossal investment. Several $billion destined to sustainably transform Algeria's future. Chapter 4. A colossal investment. Behind this railway line lies a colossal investment, losment. According to expert estimates, the total cost of the project could reach between $15 and $20 billion. An amount that places it among the largest infrastructure projects ever carried out in Africa. But why such a cost? The answer is simple. Building a standard railway is already a complex operation. Building a line capable of crossing the largest hot desert on the planet represents a challenge of an entirely different dimension. Each kilometer requires geological surveys, earthworks, civil engineering structures, signaling equipment, modern communication systems, electrical substations, as well as hundreds of kilometers of tracks specially designed to withstand the extreme temperatures of the Sahara. Some sections will cost several times more than others, especially in mountainous areas where earthworks are particularly difficult. The section connecting Chifa to Ksar el-Bukhari alone represents an exceptional investment due to the complexity of the terrain. Conversely, the parts crossing high plateaus or certain desert regions present a lower cost but require gigantic logistics. Every rail, every sleeper, and every piece of construction machinery must sometimes travel several hundred kilometers before reaching its installation site. It is this extraordinary logistics that largely explains the overall cost of the project. However, for the Algerian authorities, it is not an expense but an investment intended to produce benefits for several generations. Chapter 5. The project that can transform the Algerian economy. But the true goal of this line is not just to have trains running faster. Its ambition is much greater. Today, the immense mineral resources of southern Algeria remain far from the major industrial centers and Mediterranean ports. Among them is the gigantic Gara Jebelet deposit, considered one of the largest iron ore deposits in the world. For decades, this wealth has remained difficult to exploit on a large scale, mainly due to logistical constraints. With the new railway line, this situation could change completely. The ore will be able to be transported much faster to steel complexes and then to ports for export. The same principle applies to phosphate, construction materials, agricultural products, and many industrial goods. Companies will save time, reduce transport costs, and improve their competitiveness in international markets. Eventually, this corridor could attract new factories, develop logistics hubs, and create thousands of direct and indirect jobs. For economists, this railway could become one of the engines of Algeria's economic development over the coming decades. Chapter 6. A new gateway between Europe and Africa. But the project's ambition goes far beyond Algerian borders. For several years, trade between Europe and Africa has seen spectacular growth. However, a large part of this trade still depends almost exclusively on maritime transport. Algeria now wishes to offer an alternative. Thanks to this railway line, goods will be able to circulate between Mediterranean ports and Sahelian countries much more efficiently. In the long term, several extensions toward Niger and other African countries are being considered. If this vision becomes a reality, Algeria could become a true logistical hub between Europe, the Mediterranean, and sub-Saharan Africa, a strategic position that would considerably strengthen its economic influence on the continent. Some experts are already comparing this project to major Chinese railway corridors or the infrastructure that transformed the Japanese economy in recent decades. Of course, the contexts are different, but one thing is certain: when a country improves its transport infrastructure, its entire economy gradually changes scale. Chapter 7. The gamble of an entire generation.
For more than a century, the railway has always been the symbol of major economic transformations. In the United States, it allowed for connecting the East to the West and unifying an immense territory. In Japan, it accompanied the post-war economic miracle. In China, it has become one of the engines of the world's second-largest power. Today, Algeria may in turn be writing a new page in its history. This project is not just about laying rails across the desert. It's about bringing long-separated regions together, connecting natural resources to the major Mediterranean port, accelerating trade, and preparing the economy for the coming decades. In a world where logistics are becoming a decisive factor of power, whoever controls the major transport corridors also controls a portion of economic trade. And it is precisely this vision that guides Algeria's major projects today, transforming the Sahara from a natural border into a vast space of opportunity. Chapter 8. The future begins today. Of course, a project of this magnitude carries risks. The investments are considerable. The work will continue for several more years. Technical challenges will remain numerous. But if this line achieves all its goals, it could profoundly change Algeria's place on the African economic map. Millions of tons of goods will circulate faster. Logistics costs will decrease. The southern regions will attract more investment. New industrial zones could emerge. And above all, Algeria will have infrastructure capable of supporting its economic diversification strategy well beyond hydrocarbons. This project therefore represents much more than a simple railway. It embodies a vision, that of a country preparing today for the challenges of the next 50 years. In the heart of the world's largest hot desert, a colossal construction site is taking shape. Where many saw only an ocean of sand, Algeria is building perhaps one of the most strategic pieces of infrastructure in its history. A project capable of bringing regions together, stimulating industry, facilitating exports, and strengthening the country's position between Europe and Africa. Time will tell if this immense railway line will become the engine of a new economic revolution. But one thing is already certain. When a country invests in infrastructure of this scale, it is not just building rails, it is building its future. It is building its future. And what do you think? Will this trans-Saharan rail line allow Algeria to become one of Africa's greatest economic hubs, or do you believe other challenges must still be met before reaching that goal? Or share your opinion in the comments. I read every one of your messages with attention. If you enjoyed this documentary, leave a like, subscribe to Top Project, and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore the greatest projects, giant infrastructure, and achievements transforming Algeria, Africa, and the world. Thank you for your loyalty, and see you soon for a new documentary